The IDF has gone out to settle accounts with Hamas terrorists in the Gaza Strip and has begun encircling Beit Hanun in Gaza. And to the south, the Houthis have admitted to sinking a ship on its way to Eilat, an Israeli city, and closer to home, Hezbollah Deputy Secretary General Naim Qassem threatened a new war against Israel, and the IDF's response was not long in coming. Elsewhere, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said in a recent media interview that Iran is actively trying to assassinate both him and President Trump of the United States. Welcome to Boots on the Ground. I'm your host, Yair Pinto, bringing you all the report about what's happening in Israel. Now, 2 days after 5 IDF soldiers fell in a Hamas ambush, the IDF is widening the operation in the terror-stricken city of Beit Hanun. Tanks are encircling the city, and a hunt has begun for dozens of terrorists still in that area. So Beit Hanun is only 3 kilometers from the border with Israel, and the IDF is now working to destroy the last terror nests remaining in that location. And at the same time, the Air Force is striking hard in Gaza and in Khan Yunis in the Gaza Strip, hunting terrorists above and below the ground. And meanwhile, sources familiar with the Doha talks aimed at ending this war say that Israel agreed to change the deployment of forces along the disputed axis and speak of significant progress, even though no agreements have yet been reached with the terror organization Hamas, damping optimism. So, the IDF has also revealed that even 8 months after the ceasefire on the Lebanon front, IDF forces are operating north of the border. And in recent days, a ground compound north of Shlomi in Israel and a weapons warehouse was also destroyed. Guys, the goal of these operations is to thwart Hezbollah renewed enrichment along the border. So we'll bring you footage from the destruction and from the night operation. Of course, Hezbollah's Secretary General Naim Qassem is very unhappy about this. He has threatened a new war against Israel, but the IDF's response came quickly. And further afield, the Iranian regime is once again trying to bypass sanctions, but they've been caught by the United States in a more general sense, and the United States continues to land economic blows on Iran and on states and organizations that help it. Washington recently announced sanctions on about 22 entities involved in oil trade with Iran, funding the Quds Force, the country's commando unit, and in a related story, the regime in Tehran doesn't want you to know the full scope of the damage to Iran's missile program, but you will know because it's been publicly revealed. So Iran began the war with Israel with an arsenal of no fewer than 3,000 ballistic missiles and 600 launchers, and according to intelligence published by Fox News, these numbers are accurate. How many remain after 12 days of fighting will tell you this whole story. And speaking of Iran, their proxy in Yemen, the Houthis, have now engaged in murder on the high seas, admitting to sinking the Eternity Sea, which is a ship that they claim was on its way to the Israeli city of Eilat, and resulting in at least 4 fatalities, while 15 others are still missing. The ship was sailing under a Liberian flag with the crew composed mostly of Filipino civilians, but the Houthis made no apology for this attack, saying that the ship's activity was a clear violation on the ban. Finally, in a conversation with Syrian activists, Syria's interim president Abdel Muhammad el-Julani says that there is an opportunity with Israel once in 100 years, and the window of opportunity will not always be open. We have a lot to talk about today, so let's dive into the details. I'm Yair Pinto, and this is your Boots on the Ground report about what's happening in Israel on day 642 of the war against Hamas, Hezbollah, the Houthis in Yemen, the Shia militias in Iraq, and all the other armed groups in this region, all of which are taking their orders from Iran's Revolutionary Guards, which is the head of the crumbling axis of evil, in the Middle East. And guys, a moment before we start, make sure to make some noise in the comments area. Let us know where you're coming from and how do you think is the best way to tackle terrorism and to share the truth. I want to hear what you have to say. Guys, Israel needs your support in this toughest war. This is the war for the truth. And every day we hear more lies about Israel, more lies about what's happening in this region, because the truth has been hijacked by the mainstream media. This is why we need your help. And how do you help us? You hit the subscribe button, you hit the share button, and you never miss another episode of Boots on the Ground, so that you'll know how to pray for the peace of Jerusalem. So guys, we begin today's report with the news from the Gaza Strip. 2 days after the severe incident in which 5 IDF soldiers fell in a planned Hamas ambush in Beit Hanun in the northern parts of Gaza, on Wednesday, the IDF began encircling the area. So in footage released by the IDF spokespersons units, tanks are seen surrounding the city, which lies only 3 kilometers from the border. The move had been planned even before the deadly ambush, but now there is greater urgency. So a statement from the IDF spokesperson's office said the Givati Brigade combat team under the command of the 162nd Division has joined the 99th Division forces and began operating to encircle Beit Hanun in the northern parts of the Gaza Strip. The forces are working to destroy terror infrastructure, eliminate terrorists, and strip Hamas of its military capabilities in the area. The goal of these operations is to allow the residents of Netiv HaAsara in Israel and Erez to return to their homes. The Hamas infrastructure in Beit Hanun must therefore be destroyed, and that is what is being done. But it's not easy. This is the 4th time that the IDF has sent forces into this city, and each time layers of Hamas capabilities were stripped away, and until now, the IDF believes it has reached the hard core of what Hamas has in this city. Now, a word of explanation is in order here, guys. Topographically speaking, Beit Hanun sits on a hill, and beneath it is kind of a bathtub, giving it observation and fire control over the eastern and northern sectors of that area. So the ground on which Beit Hanun sits is sea, sand, and this presents many challenges for the IDF. So the terrorists built tunnels in the area, and now they can move through these tunnels and pop out from shafts and from the rubble of buildings, digging with their hands and in sea sand, which is easy. So they can plant explosive and they can prepare to ambush the IDF troops when they arrive. When the soldiers approach these death traps, the terrorists detonate the charges. This is some of the hardest kind of fighting that there is, but the IDF has a lot of experience in doing just that. They have also excellent equipment, and the troops are highly motivated to finish the job against Hamas. However, alongside expanding the operation in the northern parts of the Gaza Strip, the Air Force is also striking powerfully in Khan Yunis and in Gaza City. There are also many other combat areas, as even now the IDF continues to fight in several sectors on the Morag corridor inside Khan Yunis and in other areas. Sometimes there are also tactical failures in battle planning, in preparing the forces for combat, choosing the routes, or using adequate munitions or not using them. In the midst of such fast-paced and difficult circumstances, setbacks and casualties are inevitable. After the ambush in Beit Hanun earlier this week, the IDF realized it must act quickly so as not to give Hamas any sense that it has the upper hand in this situation. Hence, this operation is being carried out rapidly. It is estimated that between 8 and 12 individuals were involved in the ambush, and the IDF would like to catch up with these individuals and settle accounts with them as soon as possible. I'm talking about terrorists. In the back of everybody's minds is the possibility that there could be a breakthrough in the negotiations going on in Doha, Qatar, and the political echelon might order the IDF to stand down. For that matter, there has also been a statement this week from the IDF Chief of Staff, Eyal Zamir, in which he admitted that Operation Gideon's Chariots has gone about as far as it can go, and some new decisions from the government are needed to advance the military option. Now, on that subject, let's take a closer look at the negotiations. The main dispute in the negotiations remains Israel's insistence on the remaining on the Morag corridor, basically controlling the Morag axis in Gaza, next to which a humanitarian city with hundreds of thousands of Gazans is supposed to be established. The Palestinians claim that so far the ceasefire talks have produced no breakthrough despite Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's meetings with United States President Donald Trump at the White House just this week. So guys, remember that here at TBN Israel, we will continue to spread the truth. So guys, share, leave a comment, hit the subscribe button, and guys, guess where I'm coming to you from now in this video? Let me know in the comments. Where do you think I'm coming to do with these reports? A little hint is the church bells next to me. So let me know where am I coming from? Church bells. And guys, speaking of the truth, I want to share with you something that's been happening in Israel that is being almost completely ignored by the mainstream media. So we must not forget that right now, families across Israel are struggling. Children are going to bed hungry. Holocaust survivors are living alone with empty fridges and no one to help them. These are real, urgent problems that Israel is facing right now, and you can make a difference and help the people of Israel during this hard time. So Meir Panim is on the ground in Israel, feeding the hungry, caring for the forgotten, and restoring dignity to those who need it most. But they cannot do it alone. They need your help. So by helping Meir Panim with every kind of gift, it means basically a hot meal for the people of Israel. It means a kind smile and also hope where it's needed most. So if you want to help the people of Israel during this very hard time, please go to bless-israel.org. Again, that's bless-israel.org. Together, we can bring comfort. Together, we can feed a nation with love. And it really affects everything in the land of Israel when you guys show up and support the people that need it most. So if you want to help the people of Israel, go to bless-israel.org now. Guys, now back to the news, and we're switching our focus to the northern arena. And on Tuesday evening, Hezbollah Secretary General Naim Qassem gave an interview to local media portals in which he threatened that the terror organization will later attack Israel in response to the many strikes that have been taken in Lebanon in recent months. It is unclear if he expected anyone to take what he was saying seriously, but in any event, the IDF has not slowed the pace of operations in Lebanon. And based on intelligence information and identification of Hezbollah's weapons and terror infrastructure in several areas of southern Lebanon, soldiers of the IDF's Division 91 have engaged in a series of ground operations in recent weeks on destroying these Hezbollah positions and preventing Hezbollah from reestablishing itself in that area. In one operation on the Jabal Balat Ridge, Brigade 300 forces located a compound containing weapons depots and firing positions of Hezbollah. The reservists destroyed the terror infrastructure with no casualties to themselves. In another action, reservists of the Oded Brigade found weapons that were hidden in dense terrain in the Luban area, including a multi-barrel launcher, a heavy machine gun, and dozens of explosive charges. They promptly captured some of the equipment that they thought might be useful to themselves and then demolished the rest in that location. Circling back to Qassem, he must be aware that what remains of his offensive capabilities are being systematically demolished by the IDF, but he still wants to talk tough. As noted, on Tuesday evening, he was interviewed by El Mayadin, which is Hezbollah's main media mouthpiece. And during the interview, he confirmed some things that we've long suspected, and also said some things that I personally found somewhat surprising. For instance, he began with declaring that we learned of 7th of October, together with the rest of the world. That morning, we convened the Shura Council and decided to launch a support campaign for Gaza and not a full-scale war, because a full-scale war requires prior preparations. We wanted to ease the pressure on Gaza. The unity of fronts idea was an idea that did not mature or solidify. And according to the information on my possession, Iran also did not know about the 7th of October. This is very interesting. He went on to acknowledge that Hezbollah had been surprised by the ferocity and effectiveness of Israel's attacks against it. This is including the Biber attacks on September 2024. He also acknowledged that this operation was made possible by Israel's intelligence penetration of Hezbollah, adding that our main breach did not come from human espionage, but from technological eavesdropping and spying. The matter is still under investigation, and we will update with final findings. So the beeper issue began with a major leak. We thought that the purchase was covert, but it turned out that everything was visible to the Israelis. The purchase of the beepers took place in the past year to year and a half ago. The beeper explosions were for us a very big blow. Nasrallah was very angry in the Shura Council meeting on the 18th of September. The penetration of our communication systems was almost complete, and the Israelis knew everything that we were planning to do, and we were unaware of it. Then, after making all these surprisingly candid admissions, he concluded his speech with the routine threats of the region's terror leaders towards Israel, saying, "We will not forbear forever in the face of violations. When we decide to respond, we will respond. Our options are only two: victory or martyrdom." Once again, I don't know if this last part was meant to be taken seriously, or if it was just what is sometimes called situation identification, kind of like how I conclude all the news segments by saying that here at TBN Israel, we will continue to report on every development in the northern arena. Then basically this is the way that they are concluding their reports, by threatening Israel. This is the difference. We ask for people to pray for the peace of the situation, and they ask for the destruction of Israel. Now, let's move on to revisiting the issue of Hamas in the Gaza Strip, and more specifically, the negotiations that are ongoing to try and find a way to return the remaining hostages to Israel and bring this war to an end. So the bad news is that we have not yet reached a breakthrough. But the good news is that it seems that the gaps between the two sides are actually narrowing. So a Palestinian source told the El Hadat media portal on Wednesday that the mediators are making significant efforts to prevent the negotiations from falling. In the past hours, there have been intensified efforts to close the gaps on the disputed points. And elsewhere, Saudi network El Arabiya reported that Israel is considering a partial withdrawal from the Morag corridor from the Gaza coast to the center of the route. So this is an area that is being controlled by the IDF, and now IDF is considering to move away from that for a deal. So the report quoted a security source saying that drones would continue to fly over the section from which the army would withdraw, and to conduct surveillance, and also to be there present for any kind of response that is needed militarily. The source noted that the Israeli Navy will secure the coastal segment of that access, which is expected to open as a corridor for the residents of Gaza to move from the southern part to the northern part. And meanwhile, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu gave an interview to Fox News that was posted early Wednesday morning, in which he said that we are talking about a 60-day ceasefire, during which half of the living and the deceased hostages would be returned to Israel. If we can bring half of them back now, we will do it, but my commitment is to bring them all back and ensure that Hamas disappears from the face of the map. As the interview continued, Netanyahu reiterated his assessment that Israel has changed the face of the Middle East following the joint operation with the United States against Iran, saying, "We broke the Iranian axis. Iran no longer looks like an invincible Goliath. Within a year, Iran could have had one or more bombs." And I'm talking about nuclear bombs. They developed the capability to produce 300 ballistic missiles every month. Within 5 years, they would have reached 20,000 ballistic missiles. If we hadn't acted, we would be dead. This is the situation. What Israel and the United States did, they can do twice and 3 times. The Iranians understood our power. If we had not removed this danger, the nuclear knife would already be at our throats. Netanyahu added that Iran has recently renewed its threats to assassinate him and President Trump, saying they mean it. These are the enemies of humanity, of America, of Israel, and of all the values that we believe in. Such threats cannot be underestimated. This is a primitive and cruel regime. The Iranian people deserve better. And regarding the lifting of sanctions on Iran, he clarified, if there were truly a good deal, one that would stop all enrichment, halt the development of ballistic missiles, and dismantle the terror axis, then, yes, lifting sanctions could be considered. But that contradicts the DNA of the Tehran regime. Netanyahu also said that he has officially submitted President Trump's candidacy for the Nobel Peace Prize, explaining that just for the Abraham Accords, he deserves the Nobel Prize. He made peace between Israel and 4 Arab states within a month, after 3 years of quiet work. He also helped achieve agreements between Rwanda and Congo, India and Pakistan. This is a real Nobel, not a fake one. And regarding differences between the Washington administrations, he said, everyone says that they want to prevent Iran from getting nuclear weapons, but what matters is what they actually do. Trump understood the threat, he acted, and did not wait for the bell to wake the democracies from their slumber. This is the difference. And the Prime Minister also expressed hope to renew the diplomatic momentum with Saudi Arabia, which has halted following the 7th of October attacks, saying, "We were on the verge of an agreement with Saudi Arabia, and then Hamas attacked us. But the interests have not changed. If there is a will, there is a way, and we will find a way." And regarding Syria, he said, "I believe in open agreements that are reached secretly. Whatever we can do in diplomacy will be done secretly, and then we will surprise the entire world." And on the Palestinian state question, Netanyahu said, there already was a Palestinian state. It's called Gaza. And what did they do? They didn't build peace. They dug terror tunnels and invested everything in destruction. They don't want to build a state. They want to destroy the Jewish state. In conclusion, he stressed, we want peace with our neighbors, including the Palestinians, but it must be based on reality. And the reality is that Hamas, or the likes of it, must never be allowed to establish the state that will become a springboard for Israel's destruction. We will not let that happen. Guys, here at TBN Israel, we will continue to report the whole truth about what's happening in Israel. So give us a like, share, leave a comment, and make sure to hit that subscribe button so that you never miss another episode of Boots on the Ground. And now, we shift our focus to the reports coming from Yemen. On Wednesday, the Iranian-backed Houthi issued a statement claiming responsibility for sinking the ship Eternity Sea. This is the day before yesterday in the Red Sea, asserting it was on its way to the Israeli city of Eilat. This is something new for the Houthis, who usually don't take responsibility for their war crimes and acts of murderers and piracy. Maybe this time was different, because sources in the security company involved in rescuing the crew said that 4 people were mortally wounded in the attack, while 6 others were rescued and 15 are still missing. The Houthis, for their part, said that their navy rescued several crew members from the ship, gave them medical treatment, and move them to a safe place. If there are any members of the Houthi organization watching this, be advised that what you have done here is technically called kidnapping and is very different from rescue and moving someone to a safe place, okay? And for that matter, this is the second ship that the Houthis have attacked after refraining from action in the Red Sea since the ceasefire with the United States of America earlier this year, and it is the first time in a year that fatalities have been recorded in such attacks. And according to the Houthi statement, the attack on the ship occurred after the company that owns it and the vessel itself renewed activity off the port of Eilat. This is a clear violation of the ban. By this, they are referring to a ban that they declared in late 2023 without any legal authorization whatsoever, and using the Bab el-Mandab Straits to sail to and from Israeli ports. Now, getting back to the present, the cargo ship that the Houthis attacked earlier this week was flying the Liberian flag and operated by a Greek company. It carried 22 crew members, 21 of them Filipinos, and 1 Russian, plus 3 armed guards, an Indian and a Greek amongst them. And according to a source in the EU Maritime Security Force, Aspidis, who spoke with Reuters, at least 2 others were injured in the attack, which occurred while the ship was sailing north towards the Suez Canal in Egypt. The strike was carried out by gunmen in small boats and by bomb-carrying UAVs, and the guards on the ship returned fire. And hours before that attack, the Houthis claimed responsibility for striking another cargo ship, the Magic Seas, which also flew the Liberian flag and was operated by a Greek firm. The vessel was attacked on Sunday about 100 kilometers southwest of the Houthi-controlled port in the city of Hodeidah, and according to them, the ship sank. Last night, the Houthis published dramatic footage that they said showed the attack on the ship involving UAVs, missiles, RPG rockets, and small arms. The edited video shows a powerful explosion on the vessel, then armed militias and militants seized it after the crew abandoned the deck, raising their rifles from the shattered bridge windows. And at the end of the clip, the ship is seen sinking. Guys, do you recall that at the start of May, President Trump announced that after weeks of American strikes against the Houthis, he had decided to halt the campaign because the Houthis don't want to fight, although reports said that the Houthis agreed only to stop attacking American ships. In practice, they also ceased actions against other vessels and had not conducted any since mid-April. The recent actions mark a change in that trend, and it's raising global concerns on the situation. So guys, here at TBN Israel, we will continue to bring you all the drama, all the truth of what's happening in this region. So guys, please stand with Israel, support us by sharing this content, by hitting the subscribe button, and if you want to do the best that you can do, it will be to pray for the peace of Jerusalem. Guys, now we're shifting our focus to threats against Israel from Iran itself. The United States continues to land economic blows on the Islamic Republic of Iran and on the states and the organizations that aid Iran, announcing on Wednesday that it has imposed sanctions on 22 actors that are linked to a shadow banking network involved in illicit oil trade on behalf of the Iranian regime. The network, operating in several countries, used foreign shell companies to move funds feeding the IRGC Quds Force. And according to official statement from the Trump administration, this money helps fund terrorist campaigns that undermine international peace and security and strengthens Iran's ballistic missile programs. The network includes shell companies operating from Hong Kong, the UAE, and Turkey, intended to enable sanctions that Iranian government and bodies to receive revenue from selling oil and other goods banned under the US law. This step joins previous sanctions in the earlier round that was signed in February. So the United States threatened it will continue to deny Iran access to the global financial systems as long as it is destabilizing activities are continued against this entire region and will hold the actors involved accountable. Recall that in February, the United States Treasury declared it had sanctioned more than 30 individuals and vessels for their role in selling and transporting Iranian oil products as part of Tehran's shadow fleet. This is according to Reuters. The sanctions targeted oil agents in the UAE and Hong Kong, logistical people and tanker operations in India and China, as well as the head of Iran's national Iranian oil company and the Iranian Oil Terminals Company. The statement emphasized that sanctions were placed on tens of millions of barrels of crude oil worth hundreds of millions of dollars. Now, a good question that you might be asking right now is, where does all of this money go? So part of the answer to this question came this week in a report by the Fox News, which said that on the eve of the war, Iran possessed 3,000 ballistic missiles that are capable of reaching Israel and about 600 launchers that were needed to fire them. Now, it is left with about 1,000 missiles and only 150 to maybe 200 launchers. Beyond that, Iran's capability to manufacture additional missiles, which was one of the main reasons behind Israel's decisions to strike, has been significantly damaged. The report also quoted Dani Sitronovich, which is an Iranian expert at the Institute of National Security Studies think tank in Tel Aviv, in Israel, as saying that Israel struck every place where the Iranians manufacture missiles and replacing that capacity and the launchers, and will be very difficult for the Iranians to rebuild this ability. That, of course, is assuming that Israel does not take further covert operations to push back the ballistic program in Iran. However, Iran might have more successes in rebuilding its air defensive system, which was also a major target of the Israeli strikes in recent war. This week, sources told the British media portal Middle East Eye that a shipment of Chinese surface-to-air missile batteries has arrived in Iran. An Arab official familiar with the intelligence information said that the shipments came after a ceasefire was reached between Iran and between Israel, and came despite Israel's urgent plea to China to use its economic and political weight to curb Tehran's military and nuclear ambitions. In this context, we should recall that last month's reports surfaced of shipments of ammonium perchlorate, which is an essential material needed for building ballistic missiles, that Iran ordered from China through Beijing, and they of course denied these reports. During the Israeli strikes in Iran, the further reports emerged of mysterious cargoes and planes flying from China to Iran, bolstering suspicions of military economic activity between the states. And early this July, it was reported that Iran approached China to buy Chinese J-10C fighter jets, which ironically enough are based on the Israeli-produced Lavi fighter jets. This is actually pretty interesting. But in addition, against the backdrop of the Washington summit between Prime Minister Netanyahu and President Donald Trump, numerous speculations continue regarding a possible assassination of Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. So the media portal Iran International discussed the decision before Netanyahu and Trump on this issue. The report included the line that if Netanyahu and Trump decide to hit Khamenei, even if he hides, it seems that they have the tools and the capabilities to do so, both in intelligence and in operations. And the only question left is the final will to issue the order for such an action. So it's worth remembering that most of the Iranian generals terminated in the last war belonged to the IRGC, the Basij organization, and senior intelligence officers. This is a list that includes key figures in Iran's security establishment. Guys, here at TBN Israel, we will keep reporting on every development in regards to Iran and the wider Middle East region. And as always, we invite you to keep spreading the truth, and most importantly, to pray. Yes, guys, I invite you to pray for the peace of Jerusalem and for God's will to be done in the Middle East. Let's pray for the lives that are affected by these terrorist regimes the Iranian people, the people of Lebanon, the people of Syria, the people of the Gaza Strip, the people of Israel, everybody that is affected by this terrorism. Let's pray for them to feel God's love in this situation. Let's pray for the IDF soldiers, for protection, for their families. We just had more IDF soldiers that were being murdered by Hamas in this war in the Gaza Strip. Let's pray for their families. Let's pray for the hostages that are being harmed in tunnels in the Gaza Strip to have hope and to come home fast. Let's unite in prayer for the peace of Jerusalem. Thank you guys for joining us. Thank you for praying for Israel. Keep praying for the peace of Jerusalem.
Hello, this is Mati here in Jerusalem with TBN Israel.
This is Yair Pinto from TBN Israel here in Jerusalem. TBN Israel is keeping viewers informed with Israel-focused news, culture, and what God is doing in this land.
Support TBN Israel today on